So let's take a look at equivalent fractions. We're going to start with a visual model. So if you have the fraction tiles, please take those out. That, remember, is these here. Or if you have the fraction circles, you can take those out. You might want to use them while we're talking. So let's take a look. First thing I want you to do is I want you to take 1/4. So that would be one of the yellow ones or one of the yellow ones. And what I want you to do is I want you to find all of the equivalent fractions you can for 1/4. You can pause the video right now if you'd like to take a moment to try that out, and then we'll take a look and see how you did. So, were you able to find all of these? 1/4 is equivalent to 2/8. As you can see, they line up nicely here, right? These are the same as this. If we were to look at that, right, that matches up. It's also the same as 3/12, which also matches up. So 1/4 is equal to 2/8 is equal to 3/12. Now let's try the same thing with 2/6. So take 2/6 out and see if you can find all of the equivalent fractions for 2/6. Unlike 1/4, you might be able to look above the 2/6 and below the 2/6. For 1/4, we only went down, right? If you think about what's going on, we went from 1/4 down to 2/8 and then 3/12. Or if you're looking at it in the circles, when we're looking at the 1/4, we went to the 1/8, which are smaller pieces, and the 3/12, which are even smaller pieces. For 2/6, which is this and this, those two together, you might be able to get smaller pieces, but you might also be able to get bigger pieces. Take a moment to try that. Hit pause and then turn to the next page, or then hit play again. So here, 1/3 is the same as 2/6, which is what we wanted. That's where we were starting, was that 2/6. It's also the same as 4/12. You can see that over here in our circle models. Let's try one more time visually with 8/10. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and find all the equivalent fractions for 8/10. Did you find them? 4/5 is the same as 8/10. You can see that here in the fraction tiles, and then over here, if you watch it, look, you see all those tenths? Kind of fades away and it turns into our fifths. So 4/5 is equivalent to 8/10. Now let's try it a different way. Let's take a look at some number lines. So when we're looking at number lines, what we have to remember is we're thinking about how many parts is that number line broken into. Well, I see one part here and a second part here, which means that there are 2 parts. And then this is our first jump. This is our second jump. So that red dot is 1/2 because it was the first jump out of 2 jumps. So the red dot is 1/2. Well, we've got some equivalent fractions here. If you look at that blue dot, isn't that blue dot right underneath the red dot? So let's figure out what that blue dot is. That blue dot is 1, 2. Oh, it's the second space, 3, 4 out of 4, so 2/4. And then this blue dot down here, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5, 6, 7, 8, 4/8. So then that's 2/4 and 4/8. Those are our blue dots, 2/4 and 4/8. And then finally, if we take a look at the fraction equivalency for this page, 1/2, that's this one at the top, is equivalent to 2/4 and 4/8. As you can see, they line up nicely right underneath each other on the number lines. So 1/2 is equal to 2/4 is equal to 4/8. Let's take a look at another one. Here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for that red dot. That's this one here. So we're going to try to figure out what that red dot is. So if I count my spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, there's 6 total spaces, so that's my denominator. And then I just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th one, so 4/6. That's my red dot, 4/6. Now let's take a look at our blue dots. Well, the one up here on the top, 1, 2, 3. There's our denominator, and it's the 2nd space, so it's 2/3. And if we look down here at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's the 6th space, 7, 8, 9, or 6/9. So our two blue dots are 2/3 up here at the top and 6/9 on the bottom. So the fraction equivalency, remember what we're looking at here is the fractions that are lined up right here on that number line. 2/3, 4/6, and 6/9. Now this one's a little bit different. I started to color code a little bit. Well, let's find that red dot. If we look at that red dot, so there's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Oh, that red dot's at 3/4. Now the blue dot is at 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. The blue dot is at 6/8, which means the fraction equivalency this time is 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. Now, what if we put all of the fractions on the same number line? Well, we can do that same thing. If you take a look at the previous page, notice I did some different colors. Our 4ths are kind of a pink color here. Our 8ths are a little bit darker. And now if we're looking over here, on this one here, we have an even smaller one where we're breaking our 8ths up. Those are going to be something else. So here we know our 8ths. These are our 4ths. And then right down the middle is our halves. So let's take a look at what we've got. Now to help us out, I brought this over. Look at that, 1/4. So we know the first fraction that we have here is 1/4. Now if I bring my 8th and then I move it over, that's also 2/8. So far we've figured out 1/4. We have figured out 2/8. And then let's see, is that last piece 16th? Oh yeah, if we cut those 8ths in half, they're 16ths. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is 4/16. So let's take a quick review. These were these over here we did with the visual models. We found that 1/4 was equivalent to 2/8. But if you watch this, look at this. That's times 2. And 4 times 2 is 8. We could also look at 1 times 3 and 4 times 3. So sometimes with equivalent fractions, we just multiply to get to an equivalent fraction, but notice we're multiplying the numerator and denominator by the same amount. Let's look at this one here. What we really did is we found that 2/6, so that's where we started. To go to 4/12, what did we do? Times 2. But to go backward to the 1/3, we actually divided by 2. Okay, so you can divide as long as the same numerator and denominator, or you can multiply. Now in this third one, we went from the 8/10 and we worked our way backward to the 4/5. So how could that work? Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now the other three that we have here, these three over here, these we did using the number lines. So we saw that 1/2 was 2/4 times 2 and times 2. We also saw that the 1/2 was 4/8. Look at that. That's times 4 and times 4. On the middle one, we found 4/6 was our first starting point. We worked our way backward to 2/3, which is dividing it by 2. We also went ahead to 6/9, only this time that 6/9 does not nicely work from the 4/6, but watch this. We can go from 3 to 9 times 3, and from 2 to 6 times 3. So sometimes those visual models and the number lines help us a little bit better. Finally, the last one that we did together on the number lines was the 3/4 and the 6/8. We went from 3/4 to 6/8. Well, that's times 2. So we can build to higher terms. That's when we're multiplying. This is called building to higher terms. Or we can simplify, and that's when we're dividing. This here, that's simplifying. At this point, why don't you try these? And I've set up a Google form for you in the Google Classroom to enter your answers so I can take a look and see how you did. Remember, you can play the video as many times as you want, and you can keep pausing it too. Good luck.